Hello there, Adam Bazalgette here, founder of Scratch Golf Academy. I'm at Mediterra, Naples, Florida. Today's subject, how to release the golf club powerfully. Obviously super important. We're specifically focusing on irons here, but the same patterns are in. We'll show you two things you really need to be doing, what you should be focusing on, and one thing you need to avoid. Very briefly, if you're new to the channel here, would love it if you'd subscribe to help us build some momentum. Please hit the button there as well. You get notified every time a new video is coming your way. So two things you need to be doing with your release if it's going to be powerful and it's going to be effective. It's common sense when you really stop and think about it. Your wrists have hinged upwards in the backswing. We're assuming a decent grip, of course, but they've hinged primarily upwards. That's what they're supposed to be doing. So they have to hinge downwards. That's what has to happen with them here. And the more powerful that is, we'll get into that in just a moment, the more sudden that is, the further you're going to hit the ball. What squares the club? Well, certainly there's overall swing motion, but primarily this lead hand, if you want to feel it that way, but let's say this lead hand doing that turns the club. So you're trying to get the club unhinged and squaring the club face this way. Let's have a close-up look at this unhinge and we'll start to unravel a few of these things and we'll get to that problem that most people face. Paintbrush is a favorite image. I've dipped this in water, trying to flick the water off it that way. You'll notice there's a little gathering. It's not just this, but the more suddenly and powerfully you do that, the more the water comes off. Obviously we're doing it though in this direction. Again, spritz that water off there, load it, really snap it off, you'll have power. Well, that was a solid shot. I was happy with that. So let's talk about this. How can we work on this? Get yourself a short iron. I've got an 8 iron. I wouldn't go any longer than that, maybe 9 iron, even wedge. Possibly choke down just a little bit. We're going to set up to the ball, and I would get roughly kind of mid-drift high here with your hands. You've got to have wrist cock though. We're assuming a good grip here. Now what we're going to practice is we're going to assign the two things we're talking about to their proper role. So the downward hinge is in this dimension, the squaring of the club is in that dimension. So I'm going to get that little gathering, that little sense of popping the water off the paintbrush. I'm going to do it with a great deal of speed or I couldn't stop the club, but I'm going to sort of program that in. And then I'm going to say, okay, if I was strictly releasing the club down, what does it take with that lead hand to turn it back onto the ball? Now, one of the things that, let's get into that thing that I think people, that we talked about a myth or a confusion point for a lot of people. A lot of people, they struggle losing the ball to the right, slicing the ball. That would be to the left for a left-handed golfer. Now, what they tend to think, and with, I suppose, some innate justification, hey, if I can rip the club past my hands this way, I'm going to solve that problem. You usually don't solve it very well, but it comes with a big price tag even if you do, and that's what you've got to avoid. And that price tag is you don't compress the ball very well. Picture baseball for a second. If I'm hitting here, pow, bat in line with lead arm, angle between trail arm and bat equals compression. You could never hit home runs like this. So what happens when people try to feel like they whip the club, they lose that line of compression. That's why it's so important that you assign these two roles properly. That's the downward release. Rotating that down and forward equals squaring the club. Then you achieve a good line of compression. You can compress that ball properly. So let's try it on a small scale. Again, choke down just a little bit. I'm going to get to there, sort of get a sense of it here. That's the feeling. You see, I could feel the club really work down here, feel the back of that left hand turning, feel the club leaning against the ball and squaring it. It's not that difficult if you hang out with it, you do it on a small scale. Let's have a look from here. So here we are, there's the dimension again of the water off the paintbrush, there's the dimension of the left hand. Now let's just say, hey, certainly the body does play a role in squaring the club, but most of the time, most golfers that I see when I'm teaching golf, especially the ones that pull and slice, they do too much with their body, too much with the club in terms of squaring it, not enough by turning it that way. Again, it's very simple, just turn the back of your hand down and bow it a little bit. It's not that difficult to do. You're going to have to feel this, by the way, back in this area. You can't wait till you're right at the back of the ball to get it. So let's try to work it through. There's my feeling, a little gathering. Water would come down here, snap in there like that. That's the feeling right there. Nice low driving shot. Now, hey, if you're a typically this would be a very low handicapper. If you hit pushes and hooks, you might be guilty of a little bit too much of a closed body and too much closing it with the hands. That sort of golfer, it's not that the advice doesn't count, but they would need to feel a little bit less of that and a little bit more body turn with it. It's fun. You can really learn to do this well. Stick with it. Hit yourself a lot of little pitch shots with a short iron. I know you can learn to release the club properly. Hope that helps you with how to release the golf club powerfully. Please leave a thumbs up if you liked it, and best of luck as you try to make progress with your golf.